You are watching Dime a Dozen on MTGO Academy featuring Jason Moore.
Hi folks, it's Jason Moore here with MTGOacademy.com, and today we're going to be showcasing the Mono Red Goblins deck in Pauper. I'll be playing this deck in some two-man queues, but right now I'm just going to talk about what the deck represents and what I'm playing, what are my card choices and my numbers. So the Goblins deck, it's one of the most beloved tribes in the game, and it really shines here in Pauper. There's been cards printed from way back, all the way up to recently Zendikar and Gatecrash. And it continues to get updates, and it's pretty much viable a lot of the time in this format. It's worked really well for me historically. I enjoy piloting it, though it is surprisingly more complicated than you might think due to some of the activated abilities, paying the echo cost for War Marshal, having extra mana to do some manipulation of your graveyard with Death Spark, so on and so forth. I'm playing 18 basic mountains. I want all my lands to come into play untapped, and we do have some mana heavy plays, or for Pauper standards mana heavy. We've got the 3 mana Goblin Matron. Sometimes you want to play her and then play whatever you tutor up in the same turn. As I mentioned, the War Marshal and Death Spark can also be a bit mana intensive, as can equipping Sylvok Lifestaff out of our sideboard, and also the Flaring Pain with flashback. Sometimes you want to play Martyr of Ashes and activate her immediately. So there's good reason to have an adequate number of lands in your deck. So the way this deck works is it plays out a lot of early 1-mana creatures, creates a strong board presence. It can win through sheer aggression, but it can also win in grindier situations thanks to some of our card advantage. But in terms of the aggressive plays, we've got Foundry Street Denizen here. This is a little bit more vulnerable due to 1 toughness, but the upside is that it can attack for upwards of 3 or 4 damage at certain points in the game. It can even swing in for 5 or more, depending what you're doing, what you're setting up, how ambitious you are. So this is one of our premier turn 1 plays, probably the most aggressive turn 1 play. But he will be boarded out in a number of instances, especially in matchups where the games are going to go longer. He's going to lose a lot of his appeal at that point. We've also got Goblin Cohort. It's a 2/2, can't attack unless you cast a creature this turn, and Mog Conscripts, which is exactly the same card, just different art. And in this art, we've got a bunch of goblins eating stuff, running around, sleeping. It looks like the one in the back has a stomach ache, maybe. I mean, just typical goblin fare here. So that's our 12 1-drops that attack for 2 damage or more. In terms of other 1-drop options, we have the Raider and the Sledder, and these guys really make this deck tick. They do a lot of cool things for us. They synergize very well with Mog War Marshal. They synergize very well with Death Spark and Sylvok Lifestaff. And additionally, you can manipulate some things to determine how much damage you're taking from Sparksmith. So there's a lot of play to these. They affect combat. They affect racing, because we can often, if we just have 1 unblocked creature, we can go all in on that creature and just continuously pump until we achieve lethal damage. Now let's see, what other cards did I not talk about? Sparksmith is pretty much the all-star of this deck. This guy is crazy good. Can single-handedly win you games. However, you have to be very liberal with your life total. If you go on the Sparksmith plan, it's really hard to get off of that plan. You kind of just have to commit and exhaust them out of all their threats, all their blockers. Not all, there are always exceptions to the rule, but you tend to go pretty deep with this guy, and that's the reason I'm playing 4 of. I was playing 3 and 1 with the 4th in the board, but right now I think 4 of is pretty solid. Pauper is such a creature-dependent metagame or environment format overall. And we've got the Bushwhacker here. This is one of the best cards besides Sparksmith, because it really allows us to swing for an incredible amount of damage. As you can see with Kicker, it's an aggressively costed creature. And as far as overall utility, we've got the matrons, which can tutor up any of these guys, and it will depend on the situation what you actually want to get. A lot of the times you will get a bushwhacker. Sometimes it's correct to get a war marshal, maybe a sparksmith, and maybe even just a sledder effect to end up pushing through for those last bits of damage. You really have to use discretion with these. It's even possible to get a matron for another matron and kind of play that game, almost in a Squadron Hawk kind of fashion, but much costlier. Outside of that, the non-creature spells, we've just got 4 bolts and 3 Death Spark here. And Death Spark is another really strong card advantage, not engine, but enabler. And this is a card that you probably want to keep chaining it as much as you can. You don't really want to bury it if it can be avoided, because it does so much for you. It's really strong. I'm playing 3 in the main, none in the board. I used to do 2 and 1, and then we had Chain Lightning in the deck. But right now, I really like Sparksmith as a way to just clear out the blockers, and we win primarily through the creature-based damage. And we have a little bit of reach though. In our sideboard, we have 1 copy of Flaring Pain. This is to deal with any type of Moment's Peace kind of effect, and even creatures with protection. If they block one of our creatures, we can use this to actually kill them, which is pretty sweet. But only 1 because it's a very narrow card. 2 Martyr of Ashes. Primarily, I have this in mind for the hexproof decks, but you can bring it in a number of other instances, including the Mirror Match, perhaps. 3 Pyroblast, one of our strongest sideboard cards. For Delver, many blue decks, we're going to want to use this. It's a 1-mana counter Muldrifter, which is a very strong ability, trust me. 2 copies of Raise. I'm not completely sold on this card, but in case we face any Tron decks or maybe a Cloud of Fairies type combo deck relying on the bounce lands. Relic of Progenitus. This is a Miser's copy of a Graveyard Hoser, and we've got 3 Smash the Smithereens for artifacts, and 3 Sylvok Lifestaff, which works very well with our Sledders and our Goblin or Mog Raiders, because we can trigger 3 life at, it's basically on tap. So this is really good against a burn deck or a mirror match. You really want to use this on the more aggressive decks. Don't go too deep with this, though there is an argument for bringing it in against a more grindy, control-y strategy, depending on how relevant the +1/+0 will be for you. So this is mono red Goblins. That's right. No, let's find a goblin. Goblins. And I hope you guys enjoy the matches. We're going to jump into them right now. It's a deck I like playing. It's fun to pilot. And it's not really as brainless as the flavor text of many of these cards might suggest. So this is Jason Moore here with Dime a Dozen signing off, and we'll see you guys very soon.